Lunchtime Live on News Talk.
Brought to you by Avant Money. Think you're getting the best value from your bank? Think again.
Yeah, Celine Dion's My Heart Will Go On. It's been voted the most annoying funeral song in a recent survey that's being carried out, followed by Frank Sinatra's My Way and Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. Do you think it's appropriate to play pop songs, big power ballads from movies at funerals, or do you think we should stick with the more traditional hymns? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 1890 453 106 if you want to join us here on Lunchtime Live. Father Chris O'Donnell is a priest in Limerick and is with us on the programme. Father Chris, what do you think of people using pop songs at funerals?
Oh, Andrea, look, it's understandable because that's where people find meaning and purpose. So even though I know some people have decided that's an awful song, I can guarantee you for many of your listeners, it's evoked memories of a loved one, so It's hard to ascribe kind of meaning. And I'd say poor Celine Dion in Limerick wouldn't get a look in now because Limerick, you're a lady and dreams would be more argo after yesterday's hurling,
Of course,
but
yeah.
To be honest though, Andre, it's always a delicate kind of thing because particularly as priests, often we're in the unenviable position of trying to safeguard the integrity of a place while trying to be pastoral to people. So there's certain things that might be appropriate to various settings, be it libraries, gyms or whatever, that mightn't fit in a church setting. So it's always trying to find a balance and be respectful of people's grief and find ways to try and be pastoral to their grief and see what you can incorporate. But a lot of people wouldn't, suppose, be familiar with the hymns, and yet the sentiment of hymns will carry an awful lot of hope and comfort and love. But most people have in their heads that hymns are the things they've heard from 40 years ago, as opposed to some really lovely music that's out there now that actually is written with grief and loss and love in mind, So it's more the fact sometimes people aren't familiar with what is possible as well, that they tend to go with what they know, which is understandable.
Do you allow, Father, parishioners or people during, a funeral ceremony, do you let them play whatever kind of music they like, or does the diocese have a rule about that?
Yeah, every diocese there'll be liturgical guidelines, again, just to respect the space that we're in, So, and like everything, it's a very delicate time anyway to be with families, and you kind of don't want to be doing anything that would make their grief any harder. But inevitably, we still have to maintain some kind of the sacredness of the place, and yet you would find most places try to find ways to meet that the requests that might be for, like, My Heart Will Go On or whatever, So there's usually a balance played where you're trying to be respectful of the space, trying to be respectful of grief, and some trying to meet the family where you can, while it's not maybe always possible or appropriate, because I'd say if you had priests on, they could tell you some very strange requests that they've had, like Chris Rea Road to Hell and things like that, So it's always trying to find the balance,
Have you ever said no to a song, Father?
I'd say I probably have, and I say that with a heavy heart, because I just know, actually, I've said it to my family, God almighty, which will make me sound like a total, but again, it's not about me and what I want, as sometimes it's about the space and the church and trying to be appropriate. So, for example, what people don't realise is we listen to the words of things very much so in a church. So often at weddings, I've had couples look for Jeff Buckley, Hallelujah, and you're going, you do know there's a line in that says, she tied him to a kitchen chair, she broke his throne and cut his hair. Like, that's not the best image of marriage, So you're very aware of all the words and the various sentiments. So you do try, and like inevitably, and it'll vary from parish to parish. But you'd love if you don't want to disappoint people. It's such a sensitive time. So you're trying to find ways you can meet them somewhere and say, look. And I have unfortunately been in positions. I hate being in these positions where you've got, actually, look, I know that wouldn't really work in the church setting. but maybe as your loved one is carried out, or maybe before the Mass, or maybe in the graveyard, and just remind people there's other places,
Okay.
to do it.
So sometimes it's not a definite no, but it's just that maybe it's not in the church during the ceremony, perhaps, as you mentioned, maybe when outside the church. Stay with us, Father, if you don't mind. It's 1890 453 106 if you'd like to get in touch with us here on Lunchtime Live. Breathe McGowan is an undertaker and also a singer and a harpist. And Breathe, I know we've talked to you previously before here on Lunchtime Live. As a harpist, do you prefer more traditional hymns?
Well, can I first of all say that I totally agree with Father Chris O'Donnell there, and that people of Limerick are blessed to have him out down there. He sounds lovely. But I think it's all about being appropriate with the situation, as you know, when you're in an independent venue, you can play whatever you want, but you still want it to be, appropriate to what's happening at whatever point in the service, just so it all makes sense and works well together, because music is very powerful, and you can use that to help grief. It's a great tool for communicating with people as well. So you want your message to be a clear one, I suppose, when you are using it, for a celebration of life or in any ceremony. Yeah. I think.
Have you ever had to say no to a pop song or a ballad or something like that? In terms of
no, not in terms of performing it. Yeah. Sorry. Well, not that I would say no, but I would maybe, if there was something like Hallelujah, like Father Chris pointed out, you might highlight it to them, because they might not be listening to the words like we are, and they mightn't be aware of that. So I would highlight that and bring it to the priest or the celebrant or whatever, and see if it's appropriate.
Yeah. Do you find are the kind of the pop songs and big power ballads, are they still as common, Breathe?
Well, they are. I think it's nice. It is nice to have a part of the person, their favourite song, let's say, and the ballads are the most appropriate, I suppose, But for like leaving the church, I think it's lovely. A lot of the priests in Sligo are very accommodating here as well, and they'll work with the families and in choosing appropriate songs, pop songs as well. But it's important to maintain the dignity of the deceased as well, and having bits of them come throughout the service is lovely. So I wouldn't see too many Celine Dion renditions happening, though,
yeah.
To be honest.
They're not as common now, I'd imagine.
Not up in Sligo, anyway.
Yeah. Stay with us, Breathe, because David's on the line as well. David, you don't think contemporary music is appropriate in church?
No, I don't. I think the traditions of the church and are quite appropriate. And there's some beautiful songs and hymns out there that would bring people to tears. I find myself on many funerals that have had that. I've also, as I said, witnessed some maybe inappropriate stuff in the church, and you're kind of sitting there cringing and saying, "My God, that's not suitable." So that's where I would.
Yeah. Okay. So you'd prefer not to kind of have the pop songs or dance music or stuff like that?
No, I tell you now, I recently have listened to in the church a version of Hallelujah, and it was a wonderful version, a totally different version of that song, and it was very appropriate. And I thought that was a fantastic one. But I go along with the priest's discretion. The church is a place of worship of God, and although the person is dying or dead and has to be respected as well, there's plenty of, as I said, outside the grave of witness people with pipe bands and other things at the graveside, and they can have their own things there, and they can have their own singing or whatever. Maybe on the way to church, as you know, people often have, horse and carriages and pipe bands and whatever else. So there's opportunity, but in the church itself, you must remember that it's a sacred place. But there is fantastic hymns and songs that are heard there that would bring tears to your eye, which honour even the person that has passed away and honours God. And, for this other thing of trying to bring in, I said, Meatloaf and Highway to Hell and rock and roll and all that stuff, it's not appropriate. It's not, there's a time and place for everything, but it's not appropriate in a church, and it's not appropriate for people. And if people think that, like, it is, I have to say that they're mistaken. It's a very special thing. Funeral is, and the funeral mass is a very special thing. And, I'd go by the guidelines of what the priest is saying.
Okay.
And as I said, I heard that wonderful. There was a new version of the song Hallelujah, and it was very appropriate. So it was, the words were brilliant, and it lasted about 5 minutes. So I'd go by the guidance of the priest, and we have to remember it's the house of God. We have to respect the house of God. We have to respect the deceased person, and it's not a carnival. It's not a rock concert, and it's not an entertainment venue.
Okay.
It's there for the church is there for a specific purpose, and the funeral is there for a specific reason. So that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Let me bring Veronica in as well. Veronica, what did it mean for you to play a particular song at your own family member's funeral?
Hi, Andrea. I suppose, thinking back on it now, when I was speaking to your colleague, I actually don't remember much about the church, the funeral part at all. It was a complete blur. My dad was literally sick for 12 days, and then we had the funeral and he was gone. But up at the graveside, I remember it was a very large funeral. It was 7 years ago. And I remember when, just the sadness on people's faces, but we actually played a song called The Preacher and the Bear by Phil Harris, only because my dad was renowned for his poems and his recitations, and that was one of his most famous ones that people would request him to do.
Okay.
And I remember standing at the graveside and the song started playing, and as I looked around, I could just literally see the sorrow on people's faces literally disappear. And they smiled, and it was like the hugest testament to my dad. So I actually don't remember any of the songs that was played in the church, but it was that moment saying goodbye to Dad and everybody just almost laughing, and that was absolutely no disrespect to him or to us. And it was The Preacher and the Bear, and it just summed up my dad to a T.
And it obviously it meant an awful lot to you and your family in remembering your dad. Did you say, sorry, Veronica, was it in the church or was it outside the church that it was played?
No, it wasn't in the church. It was actually outside the church at the grave.
Okay.
So when he was being lowered down. So it was like, it's still a very prominent moment when you're laying somebody down. But it was, I remember the feeling of looking around and seeing the sadness just abate from people's faces, and a smile. And the smile, my dad would have, he was the soul of every party. When anybody asked him to do a recitation, it was either The Preacher and the Bear, The Persian Kitten, or anything like that. And that song just summed up my dad, and everybody remembered him for those recitations.
Yeah. I have a text in here from a listener who says, at my wife's cremation I requested Ave Maria be played. It was a majestic scene. All there approved of the ambience at her wedding in Rome in 1996 with the same musical piece as well, sung by the Italians. Stan in Limerick said, we played a song at my mum's funeral. The first song, Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms. She loved the band and we grew up listening to them. Donal says, I'd like to say that Father Chris was a celebrant at my friend's funeral last November, and he was quite simply fantastic. He was so compassionate and genuinely interested in the family and friends during the funeral. I've another text in here, Father Chris, from Colin, who just makes the point, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, because he just says, who is any priest to decide on the appropriateness regarding music at weddings and funerals? It's the family's choice whether they deem it to be appropriate or not.
Yeah, and I can understand Colin kind of feeling like that, and that'll feel natural, but I suppose it's coming back to the spaces that we enter. I couldn't go into a gym and tell them to play Ave Maria. You know what I mean? It's like the church is there for its people, and we have to safeguard the sacredness of it. And rather than come at it as sort of a right, if that makes sense, I'm probably not saying it right, but to go into conversation and say, listen, this piece is meaningful for us. Is there any way it can be incorporated? You know, so it's always the church will try and be pastoral as best it can, and yet you have to remember some of the requests that will come our way, through no fault of anyone, will be maybe unsuitable as well, and in as much as you'd like to, you just couldn't. Like David and Veronica really captured a lot there, whereby you're trying to keep the church as sacred as you can and know that there's a lot of healing in music and so on. And then to have that memory at a graveyard that Veronica mentioned of her dad, like that changes how Veronica will hear that song for the rest of her life. So you're trying to be sensitive to all these things, and inevitably a priest will if they can, and they mightn't always be able, find a way to incorporate a piece as it goes out.
Okay.
But it's remembering people have options now where if the music is a massive priority, then maybe they can find a place where they can have their goodbyes, maybe in another setting where they can do all that, you know, because the space allows them to do that.
Okay, all right. Listen, we'll leave it there. Father Chris O'Donnell in Limerick, Undertaker, Breathe McGowan and David and Veronica, thank you all for getting in touch with us here on the programme. 53106 is the News Talk text.
Lunchtime Live on News Talk.
Brought to you by Avant Money. Think you're getting the best value from your bank? Think again.
A little bit earlier in the programme today, we were talking about funeral songs because Celine Dion's power ballad, My Heart Will Go On, has been voted the most annoying funeral song, followed by Frank Sinatra's My Way and Always Look on the Bright Side of Life. And we were talking to various different people, including Father Chris O'Donnell and Undertaker, Breathe McGowan and Sligo in the first part of the programme. Liam got in touch. Liam's on the line in Tipperary. What's your story, Liam?
How are you, Andrea?
How are you? Good.
Yeah, not so bad. It was more a wedding song than a funeral song, but it was just when you mentioned the Celine Dion one, it brought me back to when we were planning our wedding. We spoke to the priest and we wanted a contemporary song. At the time, it was actually Shania Twain's "You're Still the One" for when we're going down, you know, after the mass and going out. But he refused, and he said he preferred not to. He said that he felt that the church was a place for church music and not for contemporary music. But he specifically mentioned My Heart Will Go On, as he said. It was about a year after the Titanic film, and he said every single second person wanted My Heart Will Go On. It was a huge hit at the time. But he said that, you know, every single time he heard the song, he got this idea of hundreds of people being killed in a boat sinking. And this was supposed to be the happiest day of a person's life, their wedding day.
Yeah.
But yet they were going down to church thinking about someone who had actually lost the love of their life in a horrible accident, and everyone thought it was a great song. So he said a lot of people didn't put thought into what the actual words or the lyrics of the song meant.
Yeah, it's funny when you describe music, it like that, Liam. Yeah, I didn't quite think of it like that actually.
So that was his idea, like, you know. I mean, this was actually a love song, but not a great love song for a wedding thing, and he just felt that at the time it wasn't appropriate for the church. Contemporary music wasn't appropriate. There was a place for it. And, like, to be honest, we were kind of annoyed at the beginning, but I've heard some of your texts coming in saying that, you know, it's people's choice. They should be allowed to have what they want. But at the end of the day, you know, you're in a place where it's not your place to be in that sense and to decide what the rules are and what you want. I mean, I'm not religious by any manner of means myself. I'm not a big person for church music or whatever, but I did feel when it was explained to me that way, that maybe, he's a bit right there when you think about it. And if you actually think back to the meaning of the song, maybe it wasn't the most appropriate thing to use. It was just that you mentioned it specifically there. And as for a funeral song, again, I don't know where that comes into. I suppose there's a love element in it that I'll meet you someplace on the other side. But, I mean, if you're talking about funeral songs, my own daughter often jokes that she'd like to hear Highway to Hell as a joke. But you wouldn't play that at a funeral either, would you?
No, I know. It's funny. We actually did get some texts in from people who had heard that song being played actually at funerals. And it's interesting, though, because, you know, sometimes the song, and that was the point that Father, Chris O'Donnell in Limerick made here on the programme earlier on, that like the words and sometimes the lyrics in the song aren't necessarily appropriate for whether it be a funeral or a wedding, but perhaps it's just that maybe that's the deceased person's favourite song. Maybe it meant something to them. That I suppose there's often a variety of different reasons.
Oh, there's no doubt it did. There's no doubt whatsoever. I mean, to be honest, on the flip side of it, I mean, I lost both my parents a couple of years between each other, and my mum's favourite song was the Isle of Innisfree. Tommy, can't think of his second name, fella from Sligo singing it. And we played that, and she would have loved that. And then we played the exact same CD for my dad when he was going down again, leaving the church as well. So he liked the song as well. So we felt there was a bit of a connection even between the two of them.
Yeah.
They both left at the same song and the same CD. But that was a personal choice, I suppose, that my mother had, and then we brought into my father's funeral, and it was grand. But again, you never, you don't know what a priest thinks. Maybe he thinks it's appropriate, maybe he thinks it's not appropriate. And at the end of the day, the church is the church. Like I said, I'm not religious in any manner or means, but I did listen to some of your callers there who felt that a church should be sacred, and they're right in a sense that we could play their favourite songs either at a graveside or maybe when we're having a couple of drinks afterwards and remembering them and having a memory back at the house and remember them that way. But I just think people have to be a bit sensitive, maybe.
Yeah. What wedding song did you pick in the end, Liam?
Probably, I don't know, Eagles Slide or something.
You better watch the wedding video back.
I have to be careful here what I say. My head is listening, like.
We'll move on.
Probably you raise me up or something like that. But I mean, that's a contemporary and a church song, something like that.
Yeah, good stuff. Listen, Liam, stay with us. Colin was also on the line too. Colin, do you think we should be playing pop songs in churches?
Andrea.
How are you?
Listen, was that Tommy Fleming, I wonder, that Liam was trying to think of there? I didn't know Tommy was a Sligo man, but I'd say that's who he was trying to think of. Anyway, to get to your question. Right, very good, very good. I firmly believe that it should be the people's choice. I would disagree. Now, Liam sounds like a very nice man, and I'm not going to fight with him, but I disagree with him saying, at the end of the day, he said, the church is the church. At the end of the day, the church is the people who are members of the church. Ask anybody, who are the people of God? All the people. Priests are not a class of their own who are supposed to lord it over us underlings. I think there's a lot of sanctimoniousness in what Father Chris was saying there. We know best, we'll tell you. No, you won't tell us. We're the people. We are the church, not you. You're the administrators. There's a question of control. Do as you're told. It's the old thing. They still control 95% of the education. They still want to control. They're willing to control everything and trying to pull the wool over our eyes with regard to all the bad things that have happened over the years. Thanks to our same church. There's greed involved. Do it our way. Pay according to our dictates. There's ignoring the wishes and desires of the people. What harm? Look, it was suggested that she tied you to the kitchen chair, she broke your throne, and she cut your hair. Somebody suggested, I remember in a conversation with me once, that was bondage. She tied you to a kitchen chair. You couldn't play that in the church. You saw her bathing, presumably sunbathing, on the roof. Oh, no, sexual imagery. That couldn't be in a church. Nonsense, I say. Who's to say that's inappropriate? If people want it, let them have it. Is this song, for example,
do you think, Colin, people should just be allowed to pick whatever song they want?
Absolutely.
Right.
It's the people who are the church. Let the people decide. Absolutely.
What about one of the points that was been made about maybe, playing songs when the person is leaving the church, or if the coffin is leaving the church, or perhaps at the gravesite?
Well, I mean, the people who decide normally are either the relatives of the dead person or, more often I think nowadays, the wishes of the dead person who has made a playlist, let's call it, in consultation with those who will be at the funeral. And really, I think there's something sacred even in that notion itself. This is the last request, the last wish of the dead person. It's being stood over by their family. Who is a priest to come along then and say, no, the dignity of the church, The dignity of the church, Andrea.
Okay.
What dignity?
Okay. Oh no! Look, I take
Canada, Australia.
Yeah. Okay. Look, I take your point. A lot of listeners, though, I have to say, disagreeing with you, Colin. A lot of people feel the church is a sacred place, and perhaps the likes of the more contemporary pop songs should be played outside. But look, Liam, Colin, thank you both for joining us here on Lunchtime Live today. Yeah. Look, we might come back to this again. Actually, there's a lot of you getting in touch with us, in particular about funeral songs and wedding songs too, as Liam mentioned there only a few moments ago. That's all we have time for, though, on the show today. If you've missed any of the programme, you can listen back on the website or on the app, on the Go Loud app as well. My thanks to the production team, Michael Quilligan and sound producer Sean Reedy, with research by Ross Leahy and Schieffer Mulqueen. Do stay tuned to News Talk though throughout the day for more chances to win €30,000. Sean Moncrief is up next though, and do you know what? We'll leave you with the song that we've been talking about here on Lunchtime Live.
Lunchtime Live on News Talk.
Brought to you by Avant Money. Think you're getting the best value from your bank? Think again.